remember speaking to Miss McInday about, kind of informing her how many bones there were broken in her face?
I do. I told her initially I think there were, 15 or 18.
Yeah, 15 to 18 bones broken just in her face. Christy Mack had just survived a 2-hour torment fest at the hands of her MMA ex, War Machine, and it only ended because he thought she was already dead. Now, Christy was left picking up the broken pieces of her body, her career, and her sense of safety, while investigators scrambled to piece together something even messier: an adult film star's private life. A violent MMA fighter's public unraveling, the man in Christie's bed that night, and the disturbing trail of red flags that no one stopped in time. This is the terrifying story of Christy Mack. Christy Mack was lying on the floor, barely conscious, covered in blood, her face so swollen he could hardly recognize her. She was unclothed, trembling, and trying to speak despite a broken jaw. Just hours earlier, she had been in bed with her new boyfriend, Corey Thomas. It was supposed to be a quiet night, but John Koppenhaver, better known by his stage name War Machine, had other plans. He still had a key to the apartment, one Christy had forgotten he even had. Sometime in the early hours of August 8th, 2014, War Machine let himself in. There was no warning, no noise, no banging on the door, just the sound of him entering the bedroom and launching himself at Corey. It happened so fast, neither Corey nor Christy had time to react. As soon as she realized what was happening, Christy grabbed her phone and dialed 911, but didn't say a word. She dropped the phone, leaving the line open so the dispatcher could hear everything. She knew that if John saw her calling the police, he might seriously harm her. So she stayed quiet and watched as John violently attacked Corey, biting his face and choking him until he began to lose consciousness. Eventually, John told Corey to leave. He ordered him not to call the police and warned that if he told anyone, there would be serious consequences. Corey left without his shoes, slipping in the blood from his injuries. He didn't call for help, and he didn't look back, even though he feared for what might happen to Christy. What followed was a prolonged episode of abuse. It was a calculated and drawn-out act, something John had reportedly planned in advance. Christy's memory of those hours comes in fragments. At one moment, she was in the shower, disoriented, her wet shorts at her feet. The next, she was on the couch, while John sat beside her, scrolling through her phone and striking her each time he saw a message or name he didn't like. She could taste blood and feel a loose tooth on her tongue. She couldn't move without intense pain. Later, she would testify about this moment.
Like I was about to stand up, and he kicked me in my ribs so hard that I fell over and began convulsing.
She told him she needed medical help, that she thought she was dying. He looked at her, shrugged, and said it was just broken ribs and that she should stop complaining. Then he did this.
He threw the dog's blanket on top of me because he thought I was just cold. That's the reason I was convulsing.
And it gets worse, much worse, from here on out, but we'll get to that in a bit. After 2 hours of unimaginable pain, Christy was still alive, and she was about to do something few people could manage in her condition. Somewhere in the haze, Christy realized she was unclothed, bleeding, and lying on the floor. She couldn't feel her teeth. She was wheezing, and even breathing caused excruciating pain. Through the fog, she heard John's voice, angry, distorted, as he pressed the broken handle of a knife against her. It was as if he were trying to erase her, one wound at a time. She heard his cold threat, too. She knew what was coming, but then he paused. Maybe he thought she was already slipping away. Maybe he believed it was over, so he walked into another room, and that's when Christy made her move. Her limbs barely responded. Her vision was blurry, but deep inside, something awakened. Survival instinct. She saw the window and knew she didn't have time to think. She wasn't even sure she could stand, but she pushed herself off the floor with every ounce of strength she had left and began dragging herself forward. The apartment was on the ground floor. That was the only thing working in her favor. She managed to push the window open, half fell out of it, then screamed, just loud enough to alert the neighbors. By the time an officer arrived, Christy Mack was curled up on the pavement, covered in blood, trying to shield herself with the dog's blanket John had tossed over her earlier, saying she was just cold. Her face was bruised, discolored, and unrecognizably swollen. Her nose was broken. Her eyes were swollen shut. She couldn't open them even if she tried. Inside the apartment, War Machine was already gone. He'd fled the moment Christy screamed. As you might imagine, he didn't call for help. He ran, leaving her in critical condition, and disappeared into the night. Christy was rushed to Sunrise Hospital and admitted directly into the ICU. The emergency team later testified that her condition was among the worst they had ever seen.
Significant swelling to her lips. She was ecchymotic on her left eye already.
She was in so many areas that the medical staff had to wash her injuries before they could even begin documenting them. Only then did they assess the full extent of the trauma.
I remember speaking to Miss McInday about, kind of informing her how many bones there were broken in her face.
I do. I told her initially I think there were, 15 or 18.
Her cheekbone, nose, and orbital floor were shattered. Her jaw had been struck so many times that she couldn't open it fully for days. At least one tooth was knocked out completely. Others were fractured or dislodged. And that wasn't the end of it. She was about to learn how serious the damage really was. Even as she fought through agonizing recovery, doctors stabilized her, ran tests, and monitored her constantly. At one point, she asked a doctor if she was going to die. He told her they were doing everything they could. Christy survived, but just barely. And while she clung to life in a hospital bed, John remained at large. He was out there, posting on social media as if he were the one who'd been wronged.
Oh my God, I'm so pissed off right now. Dude, I've been craving a Slurpee since last night.
For nearly a week, no one knew where he was, but he didn't hide his digital trail well. The entire time, he was tweeting, spinning a false narrative, claiming betrayal, heartbreak, and emotional devastation. He said he walked in on the woman he loved cheating, claimed he was pushed past his limit, asked, "What was I supposed to do when she hurt me like that?" He didn't mention the injuries. He didn't mention the weapon. He didn't mention the fact that Christy had ended their relationship 6 months earlier. In the end, it was his own recklessness that led police to him. Investigators traced his phone's location. On August 15th, 2014, 1 week after the incident, he was arrested at a hotel in California. He didn't resist. He didn't confess. He simply stared ahead, as if none of it had happened. Maybe a part of him believed he could escape justice, but what he didn't expect was that Christy would insist on making her hospital records public. And when the world saw the photos from the ICU, when the full details emerged, there was no defending him anymore. This wasn't a lover's quarrel. This was an attempted murder. Back in her hospital bed, Christy slowly began to speak again. Her jaw still ached. One eye remained swollen shut, and her voice was barely more than a whisper. But she told them everything she could remember, and she didn't keep it to herself. She began documenting her recovery process on social media. In one of her Instagram posts, she wrote, "I've had several dentist visits to make eating more comfortable and make my smile look more normal. I still have a few more dental visits to go. I've had my eyes checked out and made aware that I'm very lucky to have my vision where it is, since the muscle is tethered by the fragments from the blowout fracture in my left eye." But it wasn't just her face that had been damaged. A section of her hair had been cut off near the scalp. Her body was in critical condition. Large areas were bruised or tender, and even breathing was difficult due to fractured ribs. Her liver had also sustained a serious internal injury, something doctors usually see only in high-impact trauma cases, like car accidents or severe falls. It would take years for Christy to recover physically, and even longer to heal emotionally. In another post, she wrote, "While my face is starting to look decent again from the swelling going down, it is still not my own. Cutting what was left of my hair off and losing 15 pounds, it's a lot when you're 5 feet 1 inch, made me feel even further away from myself." Christy rejected the idea of staying silent out of fear. Fear of what? Surviving? She felt she had nothing left to lose, and she didn't hold back. She let the public see the truth about what had happened, and by the time the trial was over, the truth was undeniable. John Koppenhaver had become a danger, one whose downward spiral played out publicly, while those around him looked on. The MMA world, the adult industry, and even some fans saw the signs, but no one intervened in time. Before he was the man who nearly killed her, John Koppenhaver was someone Christy Mack actually chose. And in the beginning, it felt exciting. Two high-profile people from two controversial worlds colliding like it was fate.
We met at an adult shoot for Hustler, and it was just a photograph spread for Hustler magazine.
Both of them were doing crossover work between adult entertainment and MMA sponsorships. The age gap between them was hard to miss.
When you started dating, how old were you?
I believe I was 22.
And how old was he?
That would make him 32.
However, they were both at the top of their respective games. At the time, Christy was more than just a name in the adult industry. She was a powerhouse. Born in Indiana in 1991, Christine McInday had broken into adult film in her early 20s under the stage name Christy Mack. But even before that, she was hustling, modeling, waitressing, doing promotions, just to survive after a young marriage ended in divorce. When she moved to Miami, she said yes to whatever job paid rent. But when a modeling scout approached her with a contract that could triple her income overnight, she didn't hesitate. She took control of her image, chose her own name, and soon became a star. Christy didn't act like a victim of the industry either. She was business savvy, witty, and brutally honest about what she did and why she did it. In 2013, she even launched her own boutique selling lingerie and lifestyle accessories. She negotiated her contracts directly. She made public appearances like a brand. People liked her because she didn't try to be something she wasn't, and she was very clear. The on-screen Christy was a role. Christine McInday was a woman with boundaries, with a business plan, and with real feelings. But John didn't like boundaries.
What are you talking about? Stop! Get off me! Man. I do. I do.
He called himself War Machine, a nickname he legally adopted in 2008 as if to announce that he no longer intended to live like a person, but like a weapon. His MMA career had been explosive but short-lived. Though he had talent and aggression to spare, he sabotaged himself repeatedly. Banned from the UFC for violent outbursts, jailed for bar fights, and notorious for public tirades.
I don't know, man. If anybody gets in my face, obviously you can't hit them, right? Or you're off the show.
You know it's no good when you're too violent, even for the fighting world.
To have that image out there that a fighter is choking people out is scary.
Well, but that's nice to come out, because if we wanted to, we could smash their whole body apart.
In 2008, John had nearly choked a man to death in a parking lot over a petty dispute. That was supposed to be his public apology for it.
So it's nice and quiet, nice and peaceful. You take a little nap and you wake up, no harm done.
Shortly after, he KO'd a nightclub bouncer, getting 2 assault charges within months. When asked about it again, he seemed proud of himself and shamed the bouncer for reporting him to the cops.
Some people are a little bit different. They like to pick fights and they like to, call the cops. So, that's his problem.
He got 3 years probation with 30 days of community service. He kept rambling on about getting back into UFC fighting, but he just did not fit the culture. The point is, be violent on stage, but follow the rules. Off stage, there's no room for violence. The bouncer described him perfectly.
Beyond aggressive. Crazy, almost. That's the best way I can describe it.
He pivoted to adult films next, bringing his ripped physique and notoriety with him. And in that industry too, his bad boy brand seemed to create buzz. That image was marketable for a while. When Christy and John began dating, it looked like a celebrity pairing. Both were bold, used to cameras, and both had built careers around physicality. But what the world didn't see was how fast things turned. John became possessive almost immediately. He monitored Christy's social media, questioned her constantly about who she talked to, who she worked with, where she was. At first, she wrote it off as intense affection, but within weeks, it became clear he was dangerous. He had rules about what she could wear in public. He told her to stop doing certain scenes. He'd show up unannounced. He threatened male co-workers, almost like he'd forgotten what she did for work. He would lose his temper if she smiled too long in a fan photo. The cycle was textbook. Charm, control, explosion, apology, over and over. He also had outbursts behind the scenes, at restaurants, at her store, even during private time. In one terrifying incident, John drove the two of them straight toward a wall, screaming that if she ever left him, he'd take them both out. Christy managed to grab the wheel in time. On another day, she jumped out of a moving car at a red light just to escape him. Christy's mother, Erin, who witnessed one of John's violent fits firsthand, begged her to leave. In court, she would reveal a classic manipulation tactic John used on her, isolating her from her loved ones, making her depend on him and him only.
She was more isolated from me. She didn't want to do anything with me. She would spend more time in her room.
Christy knew she had to get out too, but she also knew what John was capable of. He talked about taking lives casually. That's the sad twist we keep seeing in these cases, you guys. She's too scared to leave, but too scared to stay. And when she finally gets the courage, he proves he's no better than the lot of them. In April 2014, Christy ended things. They just weren't a good match, she said, trying to downplay the abuse. He nodded, said he understood. For a while, he even seemed to disappear, but he didn't. He stalked her silently, tracking her social media, and he held onto the spare key Christy didn't remember giving him. And when she started seeing someone new, a man named Corey Thomas, John snapped. Corey wasn't a celebrity. He was a business owner and a reality TV personality, known for an appearance on Megan Wants a Millionaire. And on the night of August 8th, 2014, he was in Christy's bed, just two people, in private, trying to start fresh. John walked in quietly, using the spare key, and unleashed chaos on both. But he missed one crucial fact. Christy had stopped loving him months ago. She was never his property, much less now, but he hadn't stopped seeing her that way. And when she made it out alive, John didn't spiral any more than was his norm. He went online. He ranted about Slurpees.
Oh my God, I'm so pissed off right now. Dude, I've been craving a Slurpee since last night.
He ranted about betrayal too, about being done wrong. His version of the story was so delusional, it was borderline performance art, except no one was laughing. Christy, meanwhile, stayed in the hospital, unable to eat solid food or walk for weeks. She would later say that what hurt her most wasn't the violence, but the silence from the people who could have stopped it earlier. Because John had always been like this, and too many people chose to look away. This is the monster that the jury saw during his 2017 trial.
Was there violence as well?
Yes, there was.
Specifically, Judge, just like the record to notate that Mr. Copenhagen with his laugh and shaking his head.
The man who couldn't stop smirking or laughing, even as Christy described moments that made jurors visibly distressed, like this moment, which revealed not only his aggression, but also his jealousy and control.
And he was sitting next to me and going through my phone. Anytime he would see something that he didn't like someone I had followed on Instagram, he would hit me.
Or like this moment, which made it clear War Machine was dangerous to be around.
He hit my head.
Good night.
Yes.
Sadly, that is correct. About 2 hours into his intense attack, John grabbed a kitchen knife. He pressed the blade near Christy's ear, dragged it along her scalp, and caused significant damage to her hair. Not just her natural hair, but all her wigs. He destroyed each one, deliberately and carefully. When the handle of the knife broke off, he kept using the blade, still shouting, striking walls, and checking her phone, searching for reasons to hurt Christy further. Then something shifted. He looked at her and said plainly, "Now I have to kill you. I've gone too far. You can't be seen like this." His tone was flat, like someone cleaning up after making a mess. That's when Christy realized she had to escape or she would lose her life. She crawled out her window. The prosecution called doctors, emergency responders, and friends to testify. All of Christy's friends and family who had seen her injuries before and after the attack. Her mother, in particular, expressed a mix of pain, anger, and heartbreak during her testimony.
I get to the ER and I said, "I'm Christy Mack's mom. I want to see my daughter." And they took me to her room.
They also brought in Corey, who was coping with PTSD himself, and he shared several troubling moments from the attack.
You hit me here in the cheek.
The evidence was overwhelming and made it impossible for the defense to present an alternate story. There was no mutual combat or justifiable rage, only cruelty. John Koppenhaver faced 34 charges, including kidnapping, coercion, battery, sexual assault, and attempted murder. The trial was long, intense, and difficult to watch. When the verdict came in, the jury found him guilty on 32 counts, including the most serious. They were deadlocked on 2 additional attempted murder charges, but that didn't change the outcome. John had already sealed his fate.
Guilty of battery constituting domestic violence.
On June 5, 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 36 years. That means he won't be eligible for release until he's in his 70s, if ever. Given his past behavior, it's unlikely a parole board will approve his release. Outside the courtroom, his attorney said,
"Well, I think John's going to need a little time to process this. It's a really difficult day for him."
But John had already taken enough time, 2 hours to be exact, to cause severe harm, violate a woman's autonomy, and try to erase her existence. He now faces a lifetime to reflect on what he did. Christy faces a lifetime to heal, and she is still healing. But unlike many stories, this one has a form of a hopeful ending. Christy survived to tell the truth, to name her abuser, and to prove there is a way out even from the darkest situations. And that is what justice looked like here. Not closure or peace, but survival, and the knowledge that he will never silence her again. Christy Mack faced a monster and tore his mask off for the world to see. But he's not the only one. There are still men like him walking free, smiling in court, blaming their victims, and weaponizing their past to justify their cruelty. Some of them even still have fan pages. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.